Paper towels, bath tissue, the wood in your home. Those are just some of the products that surround us daily that we often don't give a second thought. But even if you did look at a sheet of paper, a pencil, a paper cup, all at face value, you might very well find that you ultimately miss the forest for the trees. One look from above and you can easily see Georgia is a region ripe with green. More than 24 million acres of forest blanket the land, and nearly all of it is privately owned and available for commercial use. That's more than any other state in the nation. Forestry ranks as Georgia's second largest industry by employment and by way of wages and salaries. In 2014, forestry in Georgia grew a solid $28 billion in economic impact and planted $721 million in tax revenues. Timber also feeds multiple manufacturing sectors: plywood, engineered and prefabricated wood buildings, products helping to sustain scores of housing and commercial development projects. Then there's paperboard, corrugated boxes, and furniture. And there's more. Wood also ignites cutting-edge breakthroughs in biomass research, leading to assorted biofuels and new forms of alternative energy. Georgia Pacific is a leading maker of products derived from wood, and a man by the name of Pete Correll would one day make a name for himself there, as you'll see in today's Executive Profiles.
I grew up poor in Brunswick, Georgia, and like all kids in my era, if you were good in math, you went to Georgia Tech, and if you weren't, you went to some other school. I went to Georgia Tech for a year, absolutely hated it. There were no girls there. Right. And transferred over to Georgia and had a great time and got an education.
You met your wife at Georgia?
I picked her up hitchhiking, interestingly enough. Georgia back then was a sprawling campus with not many students, and people got to class for class by hitchhiking with somebody who had a car. We got married and took off to Maine to graduate school to conquer the world and entered the forest products industry and been together ever since.
What attracted you to the forest products industry out of school?
Well, they paid me more than anybody else did. I originally went to work for the J.C. Penney Company in Brunswick. My father had been a Penney manager. Mm-hmm. And I got a job offer from West Vaco in Covington, Virginia, and it was $150 a month more than I was making, and that seemed like a fortune back then.
When did you get back to Atlanta?
Not until 1988. I left the Mead Corporation and called Marshall Hahn up, who was the CEO, and said, "Marshall, I'm leaving Mead, I need a job." And he said, "Well, I got a job, and I don't know what it is or what it pays." And I said, "Sounds like exactly like what I'm looking for." I didn't ever think I'd get to the top. I just would think I could do my boss's job if one of those ever came open. Right. And pretty soon you get up at the top of the pyramid, there's only one job open. And Marshall told me a couple of years ahead of time that the board had decided I was going to be his successor, and they made me president shortly thereafter.
Who did you like to model your leadership style after?
Clearly Marshall Hahn was one. Jim McSweeney, who was CEO at the Mead Corporation, was another. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of mentors.
You see a point in time there's going to be a retirement. Tell me what that was like for you as you thought about the process.
I had started thinking about retirement, and then I had started thinking, well, I don't really want to retire. I can work a couple more years. Sure. And then I got that infamous call from Charles Koch, who said he wanted to come talk to me, and he and I had known each other, and I said, "Sure, come on down, Charles." And he offered to buy the company, and the rest is history.
What are your guiding principles on leadership that you think our viewers could take from?
Well, I believe, first of all, that leadership is a God-given talent, not something you could teach. I can teach anybody to manage. I can't teach people to lead. But leaders are relatively easy to spot because they've got followers. Right. And then secondly, leaders will, like everybody else, will commit to a vision that describes a better state and convinces them that it's worth the risk they have to take to get there.
What led you to the path that made you part of Grady's foundation and helping turn Grady around?
I phased out of Georgia Pacific. I went on and started retirement, and so Adley and I had a foundation, and we're heading up the capital campaign for Emory Medical School, which is what got me some knowledge of Grady.
What about Grady interested you?
I just saw the damnedest thing I'd ever seen in my life. It looked like a MASH unit, and it looked like a hospital from the 50s. And I said, I don't know anything about hospitals, but I know a lot about businesses,
Right.
and that thing's in trouble. And
Could you have done this if you had still been at Georgia Pacific?
No.
Could you have done the Grady work? Why not?
because we knew it was going to be racial, and we knew it was going to be confrontational, and that's why we decided I had to be the leader. I was unemployed and running a private equity fund, so I was relatively bulletproof to protest. It got more racial than I ever dreamed it would, but I couldn't have touched it if I was at Georgia Pacific.
What were the key turning points you believe in the turnaround that is Grady Hospital today?
Well, we formed that chamber task force with half black and half white,
Yep.
and we reached three conclusions very quickly. Grady was a poorly performing hospital, that it was going to take a lot of capital to fix it, and that you couldn't expect that capital to come from the government,
Right.
and you couldn't expect it to come from the philanthropic community as long as it was a government hospital.
Right.
So that it had to be converted to a 501c private not-for-profit hospital. Everybody agreed with the basics until it came time to do it. And the turning point was Woodruff Foundation agreeing to give us $200 million.
Right. If we had lost Grady, the impact that would have had on our city, not simply from a healthcare standpoint, but from an economic development standpoint, it could have been
It could have been catastrophic. And once we told that story, because people did not know it, if Grady closes, you're going to die in an ambulance because all the emergency rooms are going to be on diversion. And then we started talking about we couldn't have a Super Bowl, we couldn't have a World Series, we couldn't have the Democratic conventions because all of those require a very efficient level 1 trauma center.
If you walk into Grady today, what do you see that you didn't see that first day when you visited the hospital for the first time?
The first thing you see is a great big sign that says, "Thank you, Grady," and it's got pictures of hundreds of people on it. And it really is, the people of Grady are now proud of Grady. It's clean, it's got modern equipment, it provides services that no other hospital in Atlanta could provide in the way of stroke and burn, and
Right.
even some cardiac services, and trauma, of course, is the backbone of the hospital.
The expression is about that Grady saves lives, and a lot of people believe that you saved Grady.
Well, I needed Grady about as badly as they needed me because I needed something to immerse myself in. I don't know that I bargained for Grady, but factually, it was a blessing in my life too.
Pete Correll also serves on the boards of SunTrust Bank and the Georgia Aquarium. These days, you'll find him doing most of his work through the Correll Family Foundation, where he serves as chairman. The foundation works in the areas of child welfare, community health care, and education. Next, if you're concerned about buying a home near a MARTA station, you might want to make sure you have all the necessary information because you could be on the right track. Patrick Crosby takes us by the numbers to explain why.